for question 12, factor the polynomial. First of all, is it in standard form? Yes. And for this one, I'm going to do grouping because it is more than 3 terms, more than a trinomial. So we are going to go with first group, second group. And what can I factor out of the first? I'm going to factor out a x squared. So x squared, x squared. And since I have 3 x's, take 2 away. I have x plus, and I have 2 x's, take both of them away. I'm left with positive 3. And then for the second one, I'm going to factor out a negative 4. And that looks like that's it. And that gives me positive x. Negative 12 divided by negative 4 gives me positive 3. And now I have a common factor again that can be factored out. So I'm left with x squared minus 4 and x plus 3. I am not done because x squared minus 4 is the difference of squares. Think of this as 2 to the second. So now this can be rewritten as x minus 2 and x plus 2 times x plus 3. That is your final answer. Same directions, factor completely if possible. So is there anything that can be factored out at each term? Yes, an x. So I'm going to do that first. So x gives me 8x squared. There were 3 now, and I took 1 out. Minus 3. There are 2. If I take 1 out, I have 1 left. 1x taken out is just left with minus 5. Now, this trinomial, the coefficient of x squared is not 1. So I have to do the whole sum product grouping method. So the product. So if I multiply 8 times 5, I get negative 40. So I want 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 40, but add to give me negative 3. So factors of 40. You have 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. So I want the difference of 3. So 5 and 8 will give me a difference of 3. So 5 and 8. One of them has to be negative in order to get a negative 40. So if I make 8 negative, I will get a product of negative 40 and a sum of negative 3. Because A is not 1, I have to do this next step, which is grouping. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. It's going to be 8x squared plus 5x minus 8x minus 5. Anything I can factor out of the first term, so I'm going to do my grouping here. Not my first term, the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. So I have an x, which will give me 8x plus 5. And if I factor out, basically I'm just factoring out a negative 1. So I'm just going to write that as negative, and I get 8x positive, and then negative 5 divided by negative gives me positive 5. They have a common factor of 8x plus 5, 8x plus 5, and I guess I should have wrote that 1 there. And I get x minus 1 times 8x plus 5. Now this, again, was just for a piece, just that part. So my final answer is going to be x times x minus 1 times 8x plus 5. Okay, the coefficient of x squared is 5, but before I do product sum grouping method, I noticed that a 5 can be factored out of all 3 terms. So I'm going to factor out a 5, and I'm going to get 5 x squared minus 5x plus 4. Now this makes this a little easier because the only thing now I have to do is the product sum method. Product sum. So I want two numbers that multiply together to give me positive 4, and two numbers that add to give me, not positive 4, add to give me negative 5. So the factors of 4 are 1 and 4, 2 and 2. So since it has to be positive 4 for the product and the sum has to be negative, I am going to have negative 4 and negative 1. That will give me a positive 4, but it will also give me a sum of negative 5. So my answer would be 5 parentheses x minus 4 and x minus 1. Okay, for question number 15, I have a squared plus 16a plus 64. A couple of things I can do with this, but I'm going to do the product sum again. So I have product. I want two numbers that multiply to give me 64, but add to give me positive 16. Remember, they have to be the same number. So the factors of 64. Okay, 1 and 64, 2 and 32. None of them will give me 16. 3, no, 4. And 16, 8, and 8. So I have 8 and 8, 8 plus 8. If they're both positive, if I multiply them, I get a positive 64. If I add them, I still get a positive 16. So my answer is going to be a plus 8 times a plus 8, which is just a plus 8 squared. Now, another thing you could have looked at was, because 64 is 8 to the second power, and the middle term is positive as a sum, you could have jumped straight to a plus 8 to the second power and tried it out. Okay, for the last question, it asks you to verify your answer 14. 14 was 5x squared minus 25x plus 20. If you factored correctly, you would have gotten 5 times x minus the 4 times x minus 1. So if you want to verify this, then just work backwards. You can do 5 times x, 5 times 4, which gives you 5x minus 20 times x minus 1, and then do the distributive property. 5x times x gives me 5x squared, and then 5x times negative 1 gives me negative 5x. Negative 20 times x gives me negative 20x, and then negative 20 times negative 1 gives me positive 20. If you simplify, add like terms in the middle here, you get 5x squared minus 25x plus 20.